One of the ways I tried to escape the boredom of the seminary was to read all of Charles Dickens' novels, which was a task. It really was a blessing because I read the novels with a dictionary beside me, and I built up my English vocabulary tremendously. Unfortunately, most of the words that I learned I never used again for the rest of my life, because we don't talk like that on this side of the Atlantic. But one of the characters in his novels that always remained in my memory was Uriah Heep. Remember Uriah? I think it was from Oliver Twist. He was a skinny little man who was always telling us how humble he was. I'm a very humble man. And I always thought that was kind of cute until I came down to Texas and found out that everybody says humble, but it really doesn't matter how you say it. Nobody wants to be humble, do we? But Jesus said, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." And then he gives this reading here about not etiquette. This is not the book of etiquette for the first century where you go at a banquet. This is telling us to be humble. It's a graphic description of what it means to follow the way of humility. And to learn what humility means, we really have to go to the root of the word. And the root of the word humility is humus, which means the earth. To me, it always has meant keeping your feet on the ground. Be a realist. Don't live in some kind of fantasy world where you see yourself as different than you are. And basically what Jesus and the scriptures mean when they urge us, as the first reading also does, to be humble, is to mean to live our lives in the realization of who we are relative to other people and relative to God. One of the dangers of living in our culture is that we can be deluded over time in thinking that we are better than others because we are more blessed in some ways than others. We can be deluded in thinking that we are self-sufficient when our very existence it depends on the very will of God at any given moment, beginning from the beginning of our existence until we meet God face to face. So what Jesus and the scriptures call us to is realism. Live in the real world and act accordingly. One of the ways we can do that, and I think this is basically what that little tail end of the parable is about who you invite to supper, is to live in such a way as that you don't create an unreal world, a bubble in which we keep on going thinking we are something we are not. Keep in touch with everything. Keep in touch with everyone. And our culture there doesn't help us because we have so much, and that's not a bad thing, because we have so much, we can just sort of drift off into this world which is a world of unreality. And when we read things in the paper, we have a hard time connecting to them. For instance, the earthquakes in Italy, horrible. But how do we connect with that experience when we are in our bubble? I think I mentioned once before, I read recently where most of the world spends most of the day preparing the next meal by plowing, planting, harvesting, cooking. Most people spend most time preparing for the next meal. And we live in a world where the next meal comes by a trip to the store, now cooked at the store. We have to be careful that we don't keep ourselves out of touch with reality. keeping our feet on the ground. Because if we do, we will live a life of tremendous thanksgiving for what we have been given, and also of concern for the people that we meet that have not as much as we do. And I don't speak here just of material things, but we can keep ourselves far apart from those who need our love and our sympathy and our ear, or just to be noticed. So when Jesus calls us to be humble or humble, however you want to say it, he's talking to us and saying, be real. Be real. Know where you stand.